Well, good evening, everyone. If I haven't met you, my name's Ryan. I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm just glad you're here. This is, if you grew up in a Protestant church like I did, this is something that where I grew up, Catholics did. So you might be like, what are we doing here? Isn't Ash Wednesday a Catholic thing or a high church, which means, lots of liturgy, lots of ceremony? It's a church thing. There's actually a calendar that the church goes by. It's called the liturgical calendar, and we use it to orient ourselves in God's time. And so tonight, we're going to be looking at Psalm 90, the first 12 or so verses. So if you turn there, if you got one of these sheets coming in, it's on the sheet as well, Psalm 90. And I'd like to just talk about, as we enter into this season, Ash Wednesday is the beginning of Lent. Now, we have a lot of different understandings of what Lent is. Maybe for you, Lent is like when you give up chocolate, right? You fast from something in a particular way. Maybe Lent for you is, if you did grow up Catholic, they had fish fries on Fridays in every Catholic church where I grew up in Michigan. I don't know what Lent means to you, but it's a period of 40 days from now until Easter that the church observes. And as we step into Lent, there are things that the church does, that Christians do, that are very countercultural in every time and every place. And this is one of them. Because we say to ourselves, we are going to live on God's time, and when we go into this season, we're going to do things in a way that's upside down to what the rest of the world would think. And so what I want to propose to you is that one of the best parts of Lent is that in Lent, God gives us or teaches us about the gift of the wilderness. You might be like, what are you talking about, weirdo? Why is it a 40-day period? What do we do when we go into Lent? Well, we like Jesus did when he was led by the Spirit, fasted for 40 days in the wilderness as a time of preparation. We see this period of time, this marking of days, as significant throughout the Bible. Psalm 90 is the oldest psalm. It was written by Moses. Most people believe, and I believe, it was written after the Israelites had been wandering in the wilderness on their way to the promised land for almost 40 years. It's 2 years into their trip from Sinai to the promised land that they send spies into the land in the middle of the book of Numbers, right? And the spies go into the land and they come back and they tell the people, almost all of them, but two, we can't do it. We can't go in there. It's not possible. And there are two, Joshua and Caleb, who are like, no, this is what God told us to do. We can do it. And all the people side with fear, unbelief. And because of that, God says to them, because of your unbelief, you're going to wander in this wilderness, and your generation who didn't believe, your children will see the promised land, but you will not. And so we don't know exactly when the 90th Psalm was written, but here's what we know. We know it was written, and what we find in it is a product of the gift of the wilderness. And so if we will enter in, it's like Lent actually might be coming to our rescue today. Because we need to be rescued from ourselves. We need to be rescued from the craziness of our culture, and maybe consider that living counterculturally, living in an upside down manner, could be the very best thing for us. And what we do in this season as Christians is we willingly enter into this wilderness. And as we willingly enter into it, God shapes us, he transforms us, he remakes us as only he can do by his Spirit. And maybe we'll learn some of the same things that Moses did as he wandered for 40 years with the people of God. So look at the 90th Psalm. I want to talk about kind of three gifts from the wilderness. We see a constant, we get a checkup, and we can find a change course. So Psalm 90, a prayer of Moses, the man of God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or you had ever formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. What is the one constant in life? What is your constant in life? Some of us haven't answered that question yet. We're not sure. Maybe it's the person that we call our mother or our father. Maybe it's the person that we call our husband or our wife or our boyfriend or our girlfriend, or how we're doing in our career, or how we're doing, in whatever trajectory we're on that we're looking to be the thing that holds us together. Moses, in 40 or so years of wandering, and I would imagine it's near the end of his time, he has found a constant. Now, he had discovered that before, but can you imagine being this leader with this people, all of these Israelites traveling together in a traveling camp? They're nomadic. What is home? They think they're supposed to be headed to it. They know they want it, but what is it? They can't name it, but Moses throughout this time has learned to name it. Lord, you have been our dwelling place. And maybe the most important thing that you could do over these next 40 days as you prepare for Easter is you could find and discover that Jesus really can be your constant in life. Not like a great tagline, right? Not like another thing you can go to, or like your fallback plan if things don't really work out with X, Y, or Z, but like a true constant in your life. And then we're going to spend a little bit more time here, but the gift of the wilderness is the opportunity for a checkup. So as we enter into a wilderness season or period willingly, voluntarily, we're able to diagnose things that are going on in the way that we process our life, the way we process the world, and the things about us that we don't often face. So let's continue reading. Verse 3. You return man to dust and say, return, O children of man, for 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night. You sweep them away as with a flood. They are like a dream, the grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. So we have on the one hand this constant, the eternal God, right? The God who doesn't have a beginning point, who doesn't have an ending point, who knows no limits or boundaries, who creates by the word of his power. This is the beginning point, but then we're faced with like a little bit of a checkup here, and the reality is God is eternal, we are frail. That's what Moses is saying here, that we're but dust, that we're like the grass. It grows up today and it fades and withers overnight. AKA, that's a really nice way of saying you're gonna die. I went to a doctor recently and he was doing a checkup on me and he was like, yeah, it kind of seemed like you're really kind of worn down a little bit. And I said, tell me, doc, am I gonna die? And he said, not today, but yeah, you are gonna die. You're gonna die, I'm gonna die. And how often do we really think about that? See, when you go into the wilderness, you can't avoid the reality that you're frail, that you're mortal, that you have an endpoint. This is true. There's an eternal God, and there's a human whose life is but dust. There's a famous poem about how most people, it's kind of the perspective that most people in American culture have about this reality. It's by a man named Dylan Thomas. I'm not going to read the whole poem, but it's I think about it often. He says, do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. And then here's the refrain. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying, how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And then he says this at the end of the poem to his father who's dying. He says, and you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. I can't imagine how many days that Moses was walking around with the people of God in a temporary housing, a state of temporary housing, right? They're camped out, that he was aware of the fact that his life was going to come to an end at some point. Sometimes when we're in those precarious positions in life, it becomes more apparent to us that we are not immortal. We are not, in that sense, going to outlive our own death, and that is an inescapable reality. And it's actually pretty important and very helpful that you come to terms with that fact. But more important is that you come to terms with why that is the truth. Let's keep reading. For we are brought to an end by your anger. By your wrath we are dismayed. Verse 8, you've set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days pass away under your wrath. We bring our years to an end like a sigh. The years of our life are 70, or even by reason of strength, 80, yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone, and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger and the wrath according to the fear of you? How many times did you hear the word wrath? Boy, we don't like to talk about the wrath of God, do we? Isn't God supposed to be nice? Isn't God love? Yes, God is love. We have this desire to create a sanitized version of God who isn't bothered by our sin. Sure, he deals with it, but it really doesn't affect him in any way, shape, or form. But wrath and love are not mutually exclusive. In fact, to be truly loving, God must hate that which destroys you. I mean, if God didn't hate sin, he wouldn't love you. Because God knows that sin is what's caused death in your life. It's what's caused death in this world. Death is a shadow. It's a shadow. That's all it is of a bigger problem that we all have, and that is our own sin. On the back of our sheets, there's a few stanzas from a poem called Ash Wednesday. And it's a poem written by T.S. Eliot, who went through kind of a process of conversion and faith. And coming to faith, he was probably more eloquent and reflective in trying to put that into words than I could ever be. But he does that throughout this poem, Ash Wednesday. There's 6 stanzas in it, and you don't have to take it all in now. I wrote it down so you didn't have to hear me say it because you would lose it. But I had Siri, put it on this card so that maybe you could read it. And I'm gonna read through it now, and we're gonna hit a couple of lines again as we go. So just follow along with me if you've got it. He says, if the lost word is lost, if the spent word is spent, if the unheard, unspoken word is unspoken, unheard, still is the unspoken word, the word unheard. The word without a word, the word within. The word and for the world, and the light shone in the darkness, and against the word, the unstilled world, still world, about the center of the silent word. Now, don't worry, I know that's a lot. O my people, what have I done unto thee? Where shall the word be found? Where will the word resound? He's talking about the voice of truth, the voice of God. Not here, there is not enough silence, not on the sea or on the islands, not on the mainland or in the desert or on the rainland. For those who walk in darkness, both in the daytime and in the nighttime, the right time and the right place are not here. No place of grace for those who avoid the face. No time to rejoice for those who walk among the noise and deny the voice. Let me read that again. No time to rejoice for those who walk among the noise and deny the voice. That is a picture of the chaos that sin causes in our life. And I would argue that those who have not turned to Jesus Christ cannot ever know true joy, true rejoicing until they do. Because how can they rejoice when they've never heard the voice, the word, the Son of God calling out to them, calling out to you, calling out to me? And until we choose the gift of the wilderness, we often are just caught up in the cacophony of the voices of the people yelling, trying, vying for our attention on social media and in the media and on TV and in the movies and at the Oscars and at the Grammys and everywhere we look in popular culture, telling us how to live. And we can't hear the one voice who, even though we have turned a deaf ear to him, is still speaking, Jesus Christ. And so, what do we do with that? Okay, that's great, Ryan. Great. I'm going to go into this wilderness. It's the Lenten season. I'm going to go on this journey, and I'm going to fast. I'm going to meditate on what my sin has done to me. I'm going to think about death in a more dramatic way. What's that going to accomplish in me? I'll tell you what it can accomplish in you is it can accomplish in you and for you a changed course, because that's what it did for Moses, right? We have this gift of looking back and understanding how that helps us to look ahead for our own experience in our own lives. And look at what he says. These are very, if you've been around the Bible, you've probably heard these verses before, but put them in this context. So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. So teach us to number our days. I'm kind of a morbid person, so thinking about death is actually kind of fun for me. I think all of our family, people don't get us, but we all like really sad music, okay? So I made a Spotify playlist called Ash today, and one of the artists that came up on it is this guy named Iron and Wine, and he has this album called Our Endless Numbered Days. But one of the songs on the album is all about death and how it affects us. And I listened to songs today by people with different perspectives of what this means for them. And here's what I can tell you. It's an important thing to think about, but when we don't look at it through the lens of the eternality of God, our Creator, who wants a relationship with us, I think we fall so far short, even if we might come away with some modicum of reflection. And so what I want to encourage you to do is to embrace the gift of the wilderness over these 40 days heading into Easter, and to truly learn to number your days. Let me speak to parents, okay? Yeah, being a parent can be hard sometimes. Okay, and we have people who have gone before us, and they always tell you, what do they always tell you? It goes so fast, right? When their kids are out of the house. Some of you have said that to us. You've said that to other people. It goes so fast. It does. When Min was little, I love a clean house. I mean, I like a clean house, and I get frustrated when it's not clean. Min was not a clean child. Not that she was dirty, she wasn't gross, but stuff has been everywhere in our house since she's been born, and was really hard for me for a while. And Liz, one day I mutter under my breath when I'm cleaning up. So, this thing where you're and you're mad and stuff. And Liz just looks at me and she says, one day you're going to miss this. So my favorite thing to do when Liz mutters under her breath at me is just say, one day you're going to miss this. But it's true. What if we could really learn to number our days? What that means is not that you're like, yeah, I have some perspective. I know I'm going to die, and I know it's because of my sin. It means you truly know how to live, man. Some of you are dating somebody. You're not yet married. You want to get married. You want to go to the next phase of your life. All of us are always constantly thinking about what's next, what's on the horizon, what's the next phase of life. And it can be really easy to get caught in that trap. Like, life is just around the corner. It's about to happen. But what if life is happening right now? I mean, even for a moment as we kind of conclude this time, look around this place. Look at the people here. Look at the people who love you, who care about you. Look at the God who came for you in Christ. That's what this season is about. And as we think about those things in light of Easter, right? Our death, our sin, the eternality of God, how big he is, and what that means that we would sin against him, and that he would truly be angry at that which destroys us, his wrath toward our sin. We could choose to avoid that, which is what a lot of people want to do, even in the church. Or we could embrace the gift of the wilderness. And so now we're going to come and we're going to take part in the imposition of the ashes. And I want to encourage you as you're coming to kind of come in a prayerful state and just say, Lord, over these next 40 days, I'm not going to do it perfectly. I'm not going to get it all right. This is not about my performance, but I will choose to embrace the wilderness. I'll choose it. And so just so you know what's about to happen, we have ashes. They're somewhere around here they're supposed to be from palm branches that were from last Palm Sunday. I don't know if they were. We got them from ChristianAshWednesday.com or something like that. So I asked Esther if they were from last year's palm branches. I don't think they are, but that's okay. So in the imposition of the ashes, what we're going to do, if you've never done this before, it's good to know. Someone's going to touch your forehead, and we're going to put the mark of the cross on you, and we're going to say, remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And the cross reminds us that even though we will return to dust, that there is a God who will raise us from the dust because Jesus rose first. So in the midst of these things, we have an incredibly different and a hopeful perspective. And that can change everything for us in life. Some of you are here tonight and you are not yet followers of Jesus. Maybe today you're like, you know what? I know I'm gonna go to dust. I believe Jesus died for me and he rose from the dead. And I want to embrace that hope right now. And when you come tonight to take the imposition of the ashes for the first time, it's an act of faith for you. It's an act of hope for you. The dust doesn't scare you anymore. So we're gonna read this prayer together. Would you stand with me? And there's this prayer that's coming up on the screens. If you would read the underlined portions with me. Father God, you have created us out of the dust of the earth. May these ashes remind us of our mortality and frailty, and teach us again, only by your gracious gift are we given everlasting life through Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.